And math is one of those things. You don't need $1 billion super collider sitting somewhere in Europe to do it, right? You just need a pen and a paper. The proof of the Riemann hypothesis, considered one of the deepest problems in all mathematics, could be sitting in the mind of a 16-year-old trans woman. We're not doing the richest mathematics if we're not including everybody.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, aka the Math Guru, and you're listening to Math Therapy, a podcast that helps guests work through their math traumas one problem at a time. Whether you think you're a math person or not, you're about to find out that math people don't actually exist, but the scars that math class left on many of us definitely do. Oh, and don't worry, no calculators or actual math were involved in the making of this podcast. Oh my God, we did it. Another season of Math Therapy comes to a close, and honestly, every time we start looking for new guests, I keep being like, ugh, is this eventually gonna get repetitive? But it never does. I honestly love every single conversation. I've learned so much and been so inspired by every single episode we've recorded since day one. And honestly, today's interview with Dr. Anthony Bonato is truly one of my favorites and captures everything that math therapy is about. I've kind of actually known Anthony for years, but not known him at all. I saw him around at STEM conferences over the years and have creeped him on Twitter, partially because he's insightful, but mostly because he's hilarious. Anthony is all about being out and proud about his queerness and his love of pop culture, all while being a highly regarded university math professor. Anthony is all about being his authentic self as a math prof, which sadly is pretty unusual. Today, Anthony and I delve into some seriously juicy questions like, why is math culture so fucking snobby? How do we allow our profs, students, and everyone else to embrace themselves as math people and as the many other things that they are? And perhaps most importantly, is Adele aware that by naming her albums numerically that she might actually be starting a new, never-seen-before mathematical sequence? Yep, we're about to go rolling in the deep. Anthony, welcome to Math Therapy. We are so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here.
I want to just start by talking about not the one thing. We have a lot of things in common, but one thing we have in common is our joint love for both pop culture and math and for bridging the two together. And I love it because we do it in very different ways. And I've been obsessed with your articles. I mean, the last one I read was about Adele and her numbering of albums and all of your theories about why she's chosen the numbers she's chosen, even though when I tell people, they're like, it's her age. And I'm like, yes! But Anthony thinks there might be some mathematical reasoning behind it. So, I mean, I want to start by asking, how did you bridge your two? How did you decide to bring your love for pop culture and math together? I mean, it's almost grossly frowned upon in academia. So how did you just decide to go for it?
Yeah, I've always been interested in pop culture. It's something that I grew up with. I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s, and I was obsessed with television and films and books and so on. And of course, I'm a mathematician. I have a PhD in mathematics. I'm a full professor of mathematics. And I just feel it's kind of silly to try and keep the two things separate. Mm-hmm. And I have my mathematical research, which is published in these kind of very serious journals, which very few people read or understand. But articles like the one you referenced with Adele in the conversation, I'm sure you understand this, it kind of has a much broader reach, right? And it gets reprinted places, and I get to speak to people like you. And I just think in general, sort of more broadly, there's definitely an absence of the linking of math and fun, math and pop culture, right? So that I'm sure this is something really near and dear to you. We spend a lot of time sort of keeping math in a box, making it feel sort of stultified and boring and so on. And I think just ways of pulling people in. If I could just say, with the Adele article, so that's that Adele sequence that you referenced, right, with 19, 21, 25, and 30, which, as you say, her age is when she recorded the album or she wrote the album. I'm very interested, and I use in my own research, something called the Online Encyclopedia of Integer Sequences. Have you heard of that before?
Oh my God, no, this is so exciting. I'm just hanging on to every word. Tell us more.
So sequences, so just lists of numbers.
Right.
So this is like a kind of a Google form. You can go on the website and you enter in a string of numbers, just a list of numbers, and it gives back like a Google query. It gives back a bunch of different sequences that match that. And this Adele sequence, if you enter it into this online encyclopedia, it will tell you different sequences which match it.
What's one example? What's one sequence that matches it?
So 19's in there in this
Okay.
special sequence. It's called A072666. That's the name of this sequence. And if you keep going, you're going to find 21 is in there, 25 is in there, and 30 is in there.
So all
So
of Adele's.
obviously, Adele was using this sequence to label her albums.
Do you think that?
Right?
Do you honestly believe that? You believe that?
No, that's bullshit.
Okay, also, wait, what kind of a name of a sequence? What did you say it was called? AOO what?
It's called it's called OEIS, which I always forget the acronyms. Online Encyclopedia of Integer Sequences.
Yeah.
It has literally thousands of these different sequences. So
But why don't
came
they
up with
name
kind of
them like something cool?
They're just too many. There's just
Right.
too many. And I think some of them are kind of obscure. So like this one is fairly obscure, right? It's A072666. So that one, 31 is the next one after 30. So you think it would be the next album, which, who knows? But there are other sequences. There are actually 9 sequences in OEIS which match 19, 21, 25, and 30. And another sequence, I think this one has the catchy title of A142958.
Oh my God, stop.
The next one after 30 is 41. So,
okay, so
Adele's going to be middle-aged.
Oh,
and
my
probably,
God.
she'll have done her Vegas residency, and I don't know if she'll still be making albums
You think
anymore.
she's not? But can I ask you a question? If she makes an album at like 35 and names it 35, will she have fucked up the whole sequence?
Okay, so here's the really interesting mathematical point. You hit right on the target. If she comes up with something which matches a known sequence, that's okay. You can go back to OAS and find it. Adele may create something which is not in
Own
her own
sequence.
sequence. We don't know.
And then we could actually name it the Adele sequence and not like some annoying name.
Exactly.
Okay, Adele, if you're listening, you've got a bigger goal than making another hit song.
Right, and of course, math. I'm sure Adele is not thinking at all about mathematics when she's naming these things. But it's fun to think about it,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's a
fun to
way. People who would ordinarily think about primes or sequences or anything like that. Maybe they'll click on the link in the article and they'll go to OEIS and sort of experiment around and just get an awareness that math is just like multiplication table or something like this, right?
Yes. Okay, so I love this because obviously we've tackled this from 2 completely different angles, math pun. But I remember when I was in academia doing my master's of math education, I was pissed off. I was like reading all these articles. I was like, who the fuck is ever going to read these? Like no one ever. And they're full of good, useful information, right? Like I was, my thesis was called Imagining a World Where Paris Hilton Loves Math. It's literally so applicable to the way we teach kids, to all of the stuff we now call EDI, like all of this. And I knew, I was like, no one will ever, actually I didn't. I was like, oh my God, this is going to make me famous. Everyone's going to read it. And then I realized I checked like a year later and like 10 people had looked it up from the UBC library. And I was
Right.
like, but that's when I started doing more accessible stuff, exactly like you're saying, right? So taking that research, just like you're taking your expertise in math and actually applying it on more accessible platforms. So exactly, writing articles for, because where was that Adele one? Wasn't it The Guardian?
The Conversation has an open license, so I think
The Conversation, right.
the National Post reprinted it. The Mirror in the UK reprinted it. There's some stuff in the Philippines and India as well, so it can have
That's so cool.
pretty big reach. Yeah.
So like writing stuff for platforms that are not only accessible by those in academics. In fact, a lot of those academic journals, like you need a membership, right? You can't just like download and read that stuff. So I think that's
Exactly.
And yeah, in terms of like, like shifting gears a little bit, but not even really, I think both of us are very interested in accessibility and inclusion in math, right? So like creating content that is more accessible and understandable by the general population allows more people to be included in the conversation and to see themselves as capable of math. Like, isn't that kind of the goal in a way?
Yeah, the litmus test for me is my husband when I talk to him about math. If his eyes roll to the back of his head, I realize I'm going on too long or getting too technical, right? Because he's not a mathematician, right? And this is really healthy for me.
Right.
I know a lot of academics who are, say, married or, like partner with someone who is another academic, and I'm sure they have great conversations. But
do they though?
I don't know, but I mean, we definitely have to make an effort. I mean, academics cannot live in this ivory tower and expect people to be interested in their work, to fund their work. So it's really important to me to kind of make that bridge.
Wait, I am so curious about this because I think you're actually the first academic I've spoken to that kind of shares my views on academics, which is like really interesting. Like you're kind of like a badass in a way, right? Because I feel like, and I'm literally now, when I made that couple joke about the two academics being married to each other, I'm actually thinking of two of my friends who actually sometimes listening to them have conversations. I'm just like, come on. And I'm joking. I love them dearly and they're awesome. But I will say they would be very put off by the idea that academics are in their ivory tower. Like I think a lot of academics still think, especially when it comes to math, I will say, and I don't want to just blame academics, but truthfully, they're largely to blame, that like it is kind of a club, right? Like it is kind of a, like only certain people belong.
Can feel like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of like, what do you think about that? Do you think that's changing? Like, do you feel like you're an outcast having this view while still being in academia?
I feel more like an outcast in academia, specifically in the mathematics community, because of my sexuality, being a gay man.
Okay.
That's a piece that I've sort of felt more and more acutely lately. But I don't necessarily think academics always intentionally try and be obscure. It's just, the way they talk and the way they write, it's for a specific audience. Mm-hmm. But I do think it should be part of all of us, like all of our toolbox and our approach, to spend like at least like 10% of our time writing for the general public, right?
I love that.
Math is everywhere. It's inside of everything. And seeing something as silly as like the Adele sequence, right? I mean, maybe it's not so silly. I don't know. And it can really pique someone's interest, right?
Yes, it is like the perfect mix of silly and not silly, though. Like exactly like you said. And I mean, that would be so cool if that was a mandate, because clearly academics have a lot to share. You have a wealth of knowledge. It would be so cool. You know what, though? We're kind of even seeing this with all the COVID stuff. We saw this with science, right? And that need for science communication and people being like, okay, scientists, it's so great that you have all this amazing info in your head, but right now we desperately need it for the general public. And like you've literally even seen programs in science communication start to be created by colleges. Like maybe we need a math communication one.
Yes.
Right? Like we don't.
I think we absolutely do. I think mathematicians are particularly bad at it. There's some notable exceptions, and I think many of them. But physics, for example, like is, use the pun, light years ahead, right? I mean, they're so good at communicating what they do. And, with New York Times bestsellers, like.
What do you mean? I've never even thought about this.
Well, I just think because physics, like, the creation of the universe, the end of the universe, black holes,
Yes.
these things, like particles and things like this,
Yeah, you're
or
right.
the James Webb telescope, that kind of thing. It's very relatable.
Yeah.
Like, is there a life in the universe? These are kind of questions that astrophysicists, astrobiologists are interested in, right? But for mathematicians, it's like, is the twin prime conjecture true? Is the Riemann hypothesis true?
Right.
Does P equal NP? These are deep mathematical questions. They exist. Anyone with pen and paper can doodle and sort of understand what the question is, at least. But it's harder to get people sort of engaged with it because I guess partially to do with all the jargon that goes with it, and also because of the inherent math phobia that people have, right?
It's so
the way math
true.
is taught, and yeah.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little because you just mentioned that you felt like a bit of an outcast because of your sexuality. And I really want to talk about it because it's something I really love about you. Like and I want to learn from you in terms of kind of bringing your true full self to the profession, regardless of the fact that people are assholes. Sorry, can I say that? Like they just are. I mean, I feel
it can be, and they can be for sure, especially on social media.
So I would love to hear more about that. I mean, you wrote a popular blog in 2017 called On Being a Gay Mathematician, and I'd love to hear more about your experience. And just because, again, this really ties into our conversation about accessibility in a way.
So I grew up in a very closeted time in the 1970s and 80s. And when I was a teen, I guess also HIV was a thing. It still obviously is a thing, but it was, there were no drugs and people were dying by large numbers. I mean, I heard that number recently, 800,000 people in the US died of COVID, right? And it just reminds me, 800,000 gay men died in the 80s and 90s from HIV, from AIDS. And it's something that people don't always think about. And I grew up right in the middle of that, right? As a burgeoning adult, sexually active being. And, through my education and through my doctorate, for example, there were signs, there were things that happened specifically to me that reminded me of my difference, right? But I just sort of internalized a lot of this. And even as I moved onwards into the professoriate and so on, it's been something that I didn't really think, explicitly a lot about, although I knew, there was a lot of homophobia there. Until, I think really the last like probably 5 years or so, and that blog that you mentioned kind of crystallized my ideas about the topic.
And so what can you give me a couple examples? Like, and also too, I'm just so curious because a second ago you mentioned that it was more in recent years, which is so interesting because in my mind, as you're talking, I'm like, oh, like, I think we all think things have changed so much. I'm definitely in no way think that we don't have a million miles left to go. But I'm surprised to hear that you felt it more in recent times. Like, is there, like, how come?
Yeah, and I'll preface things by saying that, like as a white man and a cis man, I carry a lot of privilege. And I think really a lot of the struggle now is focused on, trans, non-binary, genderqueer, this sort of thing. I think people in those sort of settings are having a lot harder time. And there's a lot more interesting struggles perhaps than what I'm going through. But also, I guess, I have the privilege of age as well. And I'm tenured, all these things. So maybe inside myself, I was finally able to get the courage up to talk about these issues. And I'm really pleased to see that others are doing that. I've been running these conferences, LGBTQ plus Math Day, which is on LGBTQ plus STEM Day. Lots of acronyms here. But the idea is to try and just do exactly what we've been discussing, to bring this more into focus, to talk about it more openly and honestly. Math is not gay or straight or trans or non-binary, but the people who do it are. And we need to acknowledge that. And not everybody feels safe. Not everybody feels like they have a voice that's heard. For example, next year, there's the International Congress of Mathematicians, which runs every 4 years. They give out the Field Medals, plural, at this meeting. It's going to be held in St. Petersburg, Russia, which is very controversial for a lot of reasons, like they might invade Ukraine any minute, but also because of their very bad human rights records towards LGBTQ plus Russians, right? Specifically in Chechnya, but in other parts of Russia. So those issues become very real. And like I can't go to that conference, for example. I just I wouldn't feel safe. I wouldn't go because of COVID right now, probably, but regardless, just because of my sexuality, I wouldn't go.
Okay, but that's big stuff. That's not a casual thing, right? Like,
oh, it's huge. It's huge. It's
I'm digesting that information of being like, how do you even reconcile that? Like, what? Like, are they going to change it? Like, to me, I'm just like right away. I'm like, okay, they should change it. Like, that's insane.
No, I signed a boycott letter online, and there was an article written, a letter written in the American Math Society Notices, sort of referencing people who signed that letter as like activists, kind of dismissing us. And the math community is very conservative, and I know people on the executive who are really EDI proponents who are going along with it. I know people who are invited speakers who are big proponents of EDI are going along with it. And I'm really curious to see what their perspective is, because they're going to have to figure out a way to present in Russia and, to sort of reconcile, the human rights situation there. It's really problematic, but, what can you do? We live in very complex times.
When you say the math community is really conservative, right? Like you're kind of like, well, the math community is conservative. What math community? Am I in it? Am I not? Which one is it?
I would include you in it.
Oh my God, thank you.
I would definitely include you in it. I think most of the time when people reference the math community, they're thinking about math academics at universities, some also in industry. But
okay, so I'm not in it.
I include you in it, but I think like a lot of people think of the math community as this sort of small, narrow domain. It doesn't necessarily even include math education, right? Which I think is really a flawed perspective. Yeah.
So where you're talking about, like, when you're like the math community, you're talking about academic mathematicians.
Yeah, people writing papers, this sort of thing,
Why do you think they're so conservative? Like, why the fuck would they care if you were gay or not? I'm sorry, what does that have to do with math? Who cares?
Yeah, I asked myself that question a lot. I really, why does J.K. Rowling care if someone's trans or not? It's one of these things. I think people in positions of power are sometimes threatened by difference. The newness of it all, the rapidity of it. Like people like to use the phrase woke now in a negative way.
Yeah.
But the wokeness of it.
Yeah.
Like one of the a recent development is the American Math Society canceled or are going to stop doing their blogs, which includes this inclusion exclusion blog, which a lot of people in the EDI sphere and math have written in. And they've given various explanations why they're doing this, but I can't help but feel that there's something there about people feeling uncomfortable talking about these things. Math and gender, math and sexuality those things don't mix. Math and politics don't even mix. And in some sense they don't, right? But it's the people who are doing it. And it's that sense of exclusion. I put something out on Twitter, maybe in a blog somewhere, that the proof of the Riemann hypothesis, considered one of the deepest problems in all mathematics, could be sitting in the mind of a 16-year-old trans woman, right? And I think some people's reaction, like, that's ridiculous. That would never happen. But I mean, we're not doing the richest mathematics if we're not including everybody.
Everyone, yeah.
Like, all races, all religions, all creeds, all genders, all sexualities, everything. Everyone needs a seat at the table. And math is one of those things. You don't need $1 billion super collider sitting somewhere in Europe to do it, right?
Yeah.
You just need a pen and a paper.
Yeah,
right?
And
that's the beautiful thing about mathematics. It's inherently accessible. You can sit down with a pen and paper and write out the Adele sequence, whatever it is.
And same with writing a song.
There you go. So the creativity is the same.
Oh,
it's
my God.
Different facets of all the same thing, right?
But that's so, and it's true. We're not listening to or making the best music unless everyone's invited to the table. This is like, I'm like having a goosebump moment. I'm also so hot because of these flannel pajamas. But I'm like, okay, Anthony, we have to wrap up. I'm getting the evil eye from literally everyone, even Sabina, who's not on screen. I can tell she's like, wrap it up. This is the best. You're the best. You're so cool. How can we do better? Like, if you like, what can we do? Is there anything that you're like, I really want to say this? Sorry, that's a lot of pressure.
I think we could listen to each other more with compassion. And instead of making judgments about others, let's try and understand them. Maybe we won't, but let's try. And, that applies to everything. It applies to mathematics as well. And the people who do mathematics, and if people have a grievance, if they have some issue, they feel excluded, maybe ask them, like, why, as a trans person, why don't you feel accepted within the math community? If you're a Black person, why do you not feel accepted? Maybe you'll be educated, maybe inspired, something will move you. So I just think these days there's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of heat in our discussion, largely to do with our neighbors in the South, right? That's the last 5 years have really ratcheted up the sort of political discourse and the heat and the us versus them mentality. I think if we just sat down and listened to each other more, I think we could learn a lot. Like this. I think this is great.
I love this. Final 2 questions we ask every guest on the podcast. Number 1, and I know you probably have a laundry list, but if you had to pick one thing to change about how math is taught in schools, what would it be?
Well, I've written about this. Actually, I think I wrote about it in the conversation. Make it fun.
Bam, bam, bam.
It's one of those things like people overlook. I mean, it's just why would you want to do something? Because you think it's useful? Because you think that you have to? Because you think you're going to fail the course if you don't do it? Make it fun. I mean, obviously, you need to learn the basic things like finger exercises in the piano, right? You need to know how to multiply, 4 times 5, whatever it is. But there should be some sense of exploration and fun with mathematics, or people are just not going to be interested in it. I
love it. So simple, so easy. And finally, what would you say to someone who's like, you know what, I'm just not a math person?
I respect that. I mean, I'm not like, I love music, but I don't play music and I don't read music. But I like it, I love it, and I listen to it all the time, and it moves me. And I just think people should have an open mind, this idea of listening again. There are things in mathematics that are beautiful. There are things which are not beautiful, but there are things that touch all of us. And there's mathematics in things that you don't necessarily expect. And having that sense of openness and adventure to mathematics can really help you become maybe a little less of a non-math person.
Oh my God, this is so good. I can't believe you thought in any way that you were going to be giving run-on answers. Your answers are so concise. You must be a really good professor. Like, you're very they're like very mic droppy at the end.
This is the husband rolling his eyes up in my mind. Sort of saying, Anthony, shut up. You sound pretentious.
No, you don't. You don't sound pretentious at all. Okay, This was amazing. Honestly, Anthony, it has been such a pleasure. I hope this is the first of many conversations. Like, you're just so fascinating. I'm so excited for people to go read your work. I'm so excited to see what Adele's next album is. Like, I
think we all are. She has to create a new sequence or else I'm quitting math, I think.
Okay, we are going to say goodbye now.
All right, bye.
Ugh, Anthony, the queer math icon the world needs right now. I'm still so upset that anyone is not allowed to be 100% themselves within the math community. Like, why? Bringing your whole self to a math problem is what allows you to find a solution that no one else can. And what do we need most to tackle the great challenges facing humanity? New creative solutions, more innovative and compassionate problem solving. And we are not reaching our full potential as a species if we're not letting every single person on this planet participate. If you're as obsessed with Anthony as I am, follow him on Twitter at Anthony_Bonato. Trust me, you will not regret it. And thank you once again for listening. On behalf of our little math therapy team, it really means so much to us. The reviews, tweets, and random emails we get about how the show has helped you find confidence in yourself and confront your own math trauma in your own way and at your own pace, that's why we make the show. It's been my life mission to break down the social and internal stigma surrounding math, education, and identity in general. And if that helps even one person know they're not alone and that math trauma is real and can be overcome, that makes it all worth it. If you connected with anything you heard this season, please spread the word, share the show on social media, send an episode to your family or that friend who insists they're just not a math person, and let us know if there are any topics you'd like us to explore next season. We're on Twitter at Math Therapy, and you can also follow me personally at The Math Guru on Instagram or Twitter. Math Therapy is hosted by me, Vanessa Vicaria, produced by Sabina Wex, and edited by David Kochberg. Our theme song is Waves by my band Goodnight Sunrise. And guys, if you know someone who needs math therapy or just needs to hear someone else getting it, you know what to do. Love you, bye. See you next time. XOXO, Gossip Girl.